if I start gesturing, like this, and forgetting that I'm supposed to be talking through this, you better remind me. Thanks very much for coming this afternoon. I'm sorry it couldn't be in the Porchester Hall. It's really nicer, I think, for a lecture. But this particular Sunday, Porchester Hall is booked apparently every year, and it's always booked a year in advance for this particular day, for some occasion. So today we're going to do what is in fact lecture 4 on the gosho RISSHO ANKOKU RON. RISSHO ANKOKU RON, which you remember means thesis on securing peace in the land through establishing the ultimate truth. Thesis on securing peace in the land through establishing the ultimate truth. And the last lecture was concerned with question 2 in this thesis. You remember that the thesis takes the form of a conversation between a traveller and his host for the night on his journey. And it consists of a series of question and answers. And we dealt last time just only with question 2 itself, which is on page 9 of the Seikyo Times, or the photocopy of the Seikyo Times that you may have. Page 9. So, just to refresh our memories of that question, I'll ask Robert, is it? Robert is going to read it. I hope you like me up here surrounded by the Samuels brothers. But there's an awful lot of reading to be done today. And I thought it would be good to have 2, so why not have the 2 brothers? It's a good idea, isn't it? Okay, so I'll hand over to Robert to refresh our minds on that question 2 at the top of page 9.
The guest said, "These disasters that befall the empire, these calamities of the nation, I am not the only one pained by them. The whole populace is weighed down with sorrow. Now I have been privileged to enter your home and to listen to these enlightening words of yours. You speak of the gods and sages taking leave and of disasters and calamities arising side by side. Upon what sutras do you base your views? Could you describe for me the passages of proof?"
Thank you. So this question is asked quite politely, you must agree, in quite pleasant language. But perhaps there's just a little bit of resentfulness in it, where the questioner says, "I am not the only one pained by them, i.e. all these disasters. The whole populace is weighed down with sorrow." In other words, the questioner is saying, I'm no different from everyone else in this nation. I'm also deeply concerned about these disasters, just like everyone else is. And it's worth remembering at this point that this thesis was addressed by Nichiren Daishonin to the most powerful man in Japan of that day, whose name was Hojo. And he was the power behind the scenes, actually, in all matters of government. So it's very interesting the way Nichiren Daishonin words this question, showing just that little bit of resentfulness at any suggestion that the government authorities are in any way separated from the people whom they rule. In other words, that little bit of resentfulness is really saying, you know, what's all this to do with me? I'm also pained by all these disasters. It's not my fault they're happening. I'm full of sympathy for the sufferings of the people. So, anyway, if you believe this, please get on and tell me about this documentary proof. So, the proof comes in the form of the answer to this question, in which Nichiren Daishonin quotes from 4 of Shakyamuni Buddha's sutras. They are the Konkomyo Sutra, which is the Sutra of the Enlightened King. I don't think you need worry about these titles, but it's interesting. And the Daijuku Sutra, which is the Sutra of the Great Assembly, and the Ninno Sutra, which is the Sutra of the Benevolent King, and the Yakushi Sutra, which is the Sutra of the Buddha of healing. And with extracts from these 4 sutras, he proves what he said in his answer to the first question, which was that the reason that Japan was suffering from such appalling disasters and the people were in misery and unhappiness was because they were following false teachings. And this, of course, is the whole theme of this thesis entitled Securing Peace in the Land Through Establishing the Ultimate Truth. All these 4 sutras were well known in Japan at that time. Even so, by the time he had finished giving this documentary proof in support of what he had stated, the visitor becomes really angry. In the third question, the visitor, flushed with anger, as Nichiren Daishonin describes it, says, "Hey, wait a minute, what about all these fantastic Buddhist temples that are everywhere to be seen all over Japan? What about great places like Mount Hiei and Nara, and the shrines and temples which can be seen everywhere, and the statues of Shakyamuni Buddha?" In other words, he was springing out and blindly defending the situation as it was in Japan at that time. And just out of interest, although we're not going to deal with it today, because it gives a feeling of this whole situation, I'll ask Paul, it is, to read question 3, which is over on page 14. Page 14.
The guest thereupon flushed with anger and said, "Emperor Ming of the latter Han dynasty, having comprehended the significance of his dream of a golden man, welcomed the teachings of Buddhism brought to China by missionaries leading white horses. Prince Shotoku, having punished Monobi no Moriya for his opposition to Buddhism, proceeded to construct temples and pagodas in Japan. Since that time, from the supreme ruler down to the numberless masses, people have worshipped the Buddhist statues and devoted their attention to the scriptures. As a result, in the monasteries of Mount Hui and of the southern capital at Nara, are the great temples of Onjoji and Toji, throughout the land within the 4 seas, in the 5 areas adjacent to the capital, and the 7 outlying regions, Buddhist scriptures have been ranged like stars in the sky, and the halls of worship have spread over the land like clouds. Those who belong to the lineage of Shariputra meditate on the moon atop Eagle Peak, while those who adhere to the traditions of Haklen-Yasha transmit the teachings of Mount Kukatapada. How then can anyone say that the doctrines of Shakyamuni are despised, or that the 3 treasures of Buddhism are neglected? If there is evidence to support such a contention, I would like to hear all the facts."
Thank you. So the visitor's getting really shirty by that time, as you can see. But we tend to do the same, don't we? If our own life or lifestyle are criticized, we tend often immediately to spring up and defend it, blindly and angrily, often without really listening to what that person is saying to us. It's a human tendency to cling to tradition, to cling to sentimental attachments. Even though people may not believe in their existing religion, it seems somehow safer. Others may be superstitious. Certainly, there are still people in the world, and very much so, who fear the wrath of God, even though they may not be very strongly practicing. Others may feel out of depth in a religious or philosophical discussion, and they fall back on bluster, don't they, in order to cover up their ignorance. This is a natural reaction to some sorts of people, and especially those who are entrenched in power or authority. because that power and authority rests on the existing regime or system. But even in our attempts at shakubuku, sometimes we come up against this sort of obstinacy, and we shouldn't get upset by it. For that person, it's a natural way to behave, a natural way to react. They can't prevent themselves. And after all, what one is saying when you're teaching Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism really goes to the heart of the matter. It's like a shaft of light, like a dagger, that shines and penetrates through to the very depths of life. This really shakes people. For a moment, they feel shocked and confused sometimes. So whilst we shouldn't be upset or surprised by such reactions, equally, of course, we shouldn't be undermined by them. And throughout this great gosho, Nichiren Daishonin firmly pursues his course. And his course is nothing else but shakubuku. So let's now start to look at the various extracts from the sutras which Nichiren Daishonin provided the visitor with as actual proof. We go back now to page 9, and the question is followed by the statements of proof. So we begin with extracts from the Konkomyo Sutra.
The host said, "There are numerous passages that could be cited, and a wide variety of proofs. For example, in the Konkomyo Sutra we read, the four heavenly kings said to the Buddha, though this sutra exists in the nation, the rulers have never allowed it to be propagated. In their hearts they turn away from it, and they take no pleasure in hearing its teachings. They do not support it, respect it, or sing its praises. Nor are they willing to respect or give material support to the four classes of Buddhists and others who embrace the sutra. In the end, they have made it impossible for us, and the countless other heavenly beings who are our followers, to hear the teachings of this profound and wonderful Dharma. They have deprived us of the sweet dew of its words, and cut us off from the flow of the true law, so that we are without dazzling authority or great power. These rulers increase the number of beings who occupy the evil states of existence, and decrease the number who enjoy the human and heavenly states. They cast people into the river of birth and death, and turn them away from the road to nirvana. World-honoured one, we, the four heavenly kings, as well as our various followers, and the yakshas and other beings, observing this state of affairs, have decided to abandon this nation, for we have no more heart to protect it. And it is not we alone who cast aside these rulers. The great benevolent deities who guard and watch over the countless different regions of the country, they too will all invariably reject them. And once we and the others have abandoned and deserted this nation, then many different types of disasters will occur in the country, and the rulers will fall from power. Not a single person in the entire population will possess a heart of goodness. There will be nothing but binding and enslaving, killing and injuring, anger and contention. Men will slander one another or fawn upon one another, and the laws will be twisted until even the innocent are made to suffer. Pestilence and disease will become rampant. Comets will appear again and again. Two suns will come forth side by side, and eclipses will occur with unaccustomed frequency. Black arcs and white arcs will span the sky as harbingers of ill fortune. Stars will fall, the earth will shake, and noises will issue from the wells. Torrential rains and violent winds will come out of season. There will be constant famine, and grains and fruits will not ripen. Bandits and marauders from many other regions will invade and plunder the nation. The people will suffer all manner of pain and affliction, and there will be no place where one may live in safety.
Thank you very much. But these are tremendous words, aren't they? And remember, these words that Robert has just been reading are the words of Shakyamuni Buddha. Words which were uttered 2,000 years before Nichiren Daishonin wrote this thesis. When right at the beginning he says this sutra, this refers to the supreme teaching of the Lotus Sutra. So I'd like to just draw your attention to about halfway down that first page of this particular extract, page 9, where it says, "In the end they have made it impossible for us and the countless other heavenly beings who are our followers to hear the teachings of this profound and wonderful Dharma. They have deprived us of the sweet dew of its words and cut us off from the flow of the true law, so that we are without dazzling authority or great power." So this is an expression of the feeling of the Shoten Zenjin, the forces of the universe, who no longer can feel the rhythm of the law emanating from human life. And as a result, they are deprived, it says, of the sweet dew of its words and cut off from the flow of the true law. Then we are, they say, without dazzling authority or great power. In other words, what this is saying is that these great forces of the universe feed on the generation of life force, which is achieved by us coming into rhythm with the true law of life itself. Without that life force emanating from us, they become pulled down, negative, and even destructive. I remember reading somewhere how Mr. Toda once said that when he did Gongyo, he felt as if all the Shoten Zenjin were lined up on either side of him, worshipping the Gohonzon at the same time as himself. As he bowed, he said, he knew all the Shoten Zenjin bowed. This, of course, was Mr. Toda's graphic and intimate description of the principle of Eshofuni, of inseparability of himself and his environment, and his utter closeness and intimacy with all the forces of the universe, both within him and outside him. Everything, as we learn through the benefits that come into our lives, reflects our Buddha state. Both the seen aspect of life and the unseen aspect of life reflects outside us what is emanating from us. Anger reflects anger. Buddha reflects Buddha. This is why Mr. Toda understood that through doing his daily practice of Gongyo and Daimoku, he was in harmony with all these myriad forces that exist in this great universe. And through his Gongyo, and of course others' Gongyo, they would react positively from, as it were, their Buddha state. And through this create a happier world for Mr. Toda and a happier and more harmonious and progressive world for everybody else. If we are negative, these forces are negative. If we are positive, they're positive. If we are negative, they'll drag us down even further, just as we drag them down even further. Until in the end, even, it's possible for them to destroy us, and for us to destroy them. This is why Nichiren Daishonin pointed out that the reason Japan was going through these appalling calamities was because the Buddhist gods, or the Shoten Zenjin, forces of the universe, the protective forces, had left the country. were no longer functioning positively and fully for the protection of the people. If we go over the page, about halfway down the left-hand column, men will slander one another or fawn upon one another, and the laws will be twisted until even the innocent are made to suffer. Of course, this is a graphic description, isn't it, of what is going on in many parts of the world today. Corrupt politics or bureaucratic control, which is twisting and distorting the laws of the land and stifling the freedom of the people. This is one of the three calamities and 7 disasters. That is to say, man is breaking down so far as his relationships with other men are concerned. A breakdown of the relationships of man to man, woman to woman, woman to man, man to woman. A breakdown of the relationships which are, after all, the fabric of society, aren't they? And then he goes on, pestilence and disease will become rampant. This is another of the calamities. Pestilence. Outbreaks very widespread of disease. This is where there is a breakdown of relationship between man and himself. Because of disturbance in man's body and mind, he becomes physically vulnerable to disease. This is caused through agitation, confusion, panic, constant anxiety and worry. Weakens not only the spiritual self, but of course the physical self as well. Another of the calamities. Man becoming out of balance, out of harmony with himself. And then it goes on with various natural calamities. Comets will appear again and again, 2 suns will come forth side by side, and eclipses will occur with unaccustomed frequency. Black arcs and white arcs will span the sky as harbingers of ill fortune. Stars will fall, the earth will shake, and noises will issue from the wells. So I don't intend, nor would there be time, to go into all these descriptions of natural happenings that are in the gosho. But it doesn't take too much imagination to appreciate what they may be. Whatever happens, there is a disorder in the natural elements. And this is the third calamity of the 3 calamities, where there is a breakdown of the relationship between man and nature. So the 3 calamities are a breakdown of the relationship between man and man, between man and himself, and between man and nature. So we all see plenty in the newspapers of the natural disasters that are occurring everywhere in the world. And they've been particularly horrendous in recent years. Then, a little further down, torrential rains and violent winds will come out of season. There will be constant famine, and grains and fruits will not ripen. Bandits and marauders from many other regions will invade and plunder the nation. The people will suffer all manner of pain and affliction, and there will be no place where one may live in safety. I think we see plenty of sign of bandits today. Hijacks, assassinations, all come under that heading. Disorders such as occurred recently in Brixton and the tragedy of Northern Ireland are all examples of it. Lawlessness, in other words, and a proneness to violence. So man is out of balance with himself and with society and with nature. And this is manifested in all these various disastrous ways. In the last line of that paragraph, there will be no place where one may live in safety. This is true. I'm glad to say it's not yet totally true in this country, but it's getting along the way to it. But there are cities in this world where you cannot go out with safety for a walk in the park or with your dog. I met somebody only a couple of weeks ago who's just come back from an African country. It can remain anonymous. But there, everything is in chaos, especially the economy. And because of petrol rationing, you're only allowed to use your car 2 days a week and on Sunday mornings. On Sunday afternoon, no car is allowed out on the road. So I said, well, in that case, I suppose everyone has to walk everywhere. Probably you walk to your meetings. He was a member, this person. And he said, no, that's impossible. Because if anyone walks out on the streets on Sunday afternoon, they'll certainly be attacked. So the only way is for everyone to stay at home. This is an incredible situation, isn't it? It's difficult to imagine such a situation in London or in Manchester or Liverpool or Glasgow. But this is what human society can descend to if the Buddhist gods are no longer vitally protecting the people through their efforts to live a great life. Okay, we'll go on now to the Daijoku Sutra, which is the next at the top of the right-hand column of page 10.
The Daijoku Sutra says, when the principles of Buddhism truly become obscured and lost, then people will all let their beards, hair, and fingernails grow long, and the laws of the world will be forgotten and ignored. At that time, loud noises will sound in the air, and the earth will shake. Everything in the world will begin to move as though it were a water wheel. City walls will split and tumble, and all houses and dwellings will collapse and fall down. Roots, branches, leaves, petals, and fruits will lose their medicinal properties. With the exception of the 5 highest heavens in the world of form, all the regions of the worlds of form and desire will become deprived of the 7 flavors and the 3 essences that nourish life and human society until nothing remains alive anymore. All the good discourses that lead men to emancipation will at this time disappear. The flowers and fruits that grow on the earth will become few and will lose their flavor and beauty. The wells, springs, and ponds will all go dry. The land everywhere will turn brackish and will crack open and warp into hillocks and gullies. All the mountains will be swept by fire, and the heavenly dragons will no longer send down rain. The crops will all wither and die, all living creatures will perish, and even the grass will cease to grow any more. Dust will rain down until all is darkness, and the sun and the moon no longer shed their light. All the 4 directions will be afflicted by drought, and evil omens will appear again and again. The 10 kinds of evil behavior will increase greatly, particularly greed, anger, and stupidity. And people will think no more of their fathers and mothers than does the roe deer. Living beings will decline in numbers, in longevity, physical power, and enjoyment. They will become estranged from the pleasures of human and heavenly existence, and all will fall into the evil states of existence. The wicked rulers and monks who perform these 10 kinds of evil behavior will destroy the true law of the Buddha and make it impossible for sentient beings to be born in a human and heavenly states of existence. At that time, the rulers of benevolent deities who have pity upon living beings will abandon this nation of confusion and evil, and all will make their way to other regions.
Thank you very much. Now, here at the beginning, Nichiren Daishonin quotes an interesting, in view of contemporary history, an interesting point right at the beginning, doesn't he? When the principles of Buddhism truly become obscured and lost, then people will all let their beards, hair and fingernails grow long, and the laws of the world will be forgotten and ignored. What he's referring to there is nyose so, the outer appearance. Nyose so. Nyose so, the first of the 10 factors which you recite every day during Gongyo. Nyose so, nyose sho, nyose tai, nyose riki, nyose san, nyose yin, etc., etc. Nyose so is the outward appearance. Nyose sho is the unseen part of life, or spiritual side of life, and nyose tai is the very entity of our lives. And you remember at the end of that we say honma kukyoto, consistency from beginning to end. That is to say, whatever world or state of life one may be in at any given moment, it affects every single aspect of one's life, including the outer appearance, the spiritual aspect, and the very entity of life itself. In other words, there's nothing that we can really hide. Whatever is in our hearts will be revealed outwardly in our appearance, honma kukyoto, with absolute consistency from beginning to end. So those who are confused and in hell, agitated or upset, or suffering from intense negativity, inevitably, of course, show it outwardly in their appearance. I think that those, for instance, who became hippies in the early 60s, and indeed some of those who are tramps or hippies today, are often extremely sensitive people. They feel what is going on in the world extremely deeply. And they are unable to overcome the effect this has on their lives. It manifests itself in the hippie state. To escape, to hide, and so on. To turn their backs on society, which seems to give nothing but pain. Just a few days ago, President Ikeda was in Frankfurt in Germany. As it happened, he talked about nyose so. I'll just read a small part of it. He said, the gosho on the selection of time says, nyose so is the most important thing. Therefore, the Buddha appears in this world. The Junyose, 10 factors, in the Hobenpon chapter, starts with nyose so, which is the most important. This is Nichiren Daishonin's message to us. Whether one is behaving as one who is truly practicing or not can be clearly seen through nyose so. An angry person, a person who is jealous, a person who is always complaining can be seen clearly through nyose so. As you already know, the situation quite frequently arises where many people can be influenced by the behavior of those who are practicing, and think as a result about starting to join and practice to the Gohonzon themselves. Of course, the reverse is also true. It's true that some people get into the practice because of the philosophy. But nyose so is the most important thing. A leader's firm conviction in faith has the power to embrace people. This is nyose so as well. Depending on such leaders, people will feel at ease or uneasy. So I sincerely wish every one of you to have nyose so which is full of fortune and sincerity, so that you will be trusted by other people. So nyose so is outward proof, isn't it? Actual proof of our lifestyle, or of our good fortune or lack of it. Whether we are in hell or heaven can be clearly seen on the outside. It's through nyose so that we shakabuku, mostly. Through the nyose so of all the members at a discussion meeting, isn't it? That a guest feels something great about the atmosphere and about the people there. This is the nyose so of the Buddha state, revealed through, quite naturally, through the practice of gongyo, daimoku, and shakabuku. I think this is a very important point. In other words, we really can be natural. If we're practicing to the Gonzen, we can be totally ourselves. There's no need to put on an act. There's no need to feel that you've got to exemplify something. The fact is that if we practice to the Gonzen, our nyose so will shine with Buddhahood, though we may not realize it ourselves often. This is why ordinary people like us can affect the atmosphere at a small meeting, which somehow impresses the person who comes there for the first time. Nyose so. We can be natural. We are what we are. What is most important, that we should express that person that we truly are through the power of the Gonzen in the most natural and beautiful way. Plum is a plum, peach is a peach, a pear is a pear, a cherry is a cherry. Each one is supreme in itself. So I believe as we practice to the Gonzen, day in, day out, month after month, gradually we begin to realize this. And we begin to understand that it's our true selves, our natural self, based on the Gonzen, the profound practice of this Buddhism, which is what enables us to live happily in this world with everybody around us. So going back to what President Ikeda said at the beginning, quotation from On the Selection of Time, nyose so is the most important thing. Therefore, the Buddha appears in this world. So not only did Shakyamuni Buddha appear and Nichiren Daishonin appear, but the point is the Buddha appears in this world through us. That's the important point. That is the actual proof which helps someone else to believe that Buddhism, there must be something great about it. Because the Buddha appears in this world through us, through what we radiate, through what we say, through the unusual angle that we may look upon some problem from, and so on. This is so incredible, isn't it? So nyose so is extremely important. So to go on a little further, quarter of the way down, roots, branches, leaves, petals, and fruits will lose their medicinal properties. I don't think that's at all difficult to understand. We all know, only too well now, the difference between an egg from a battery hen, an egg from a hen that's running free range. There's different, aren't there, as chalk from cheese. If you don't know, then I suggest you just try an egg from a free-running hen, and you'll find its nose so even is totally different from the egg from a battery hen. So, of course, in many different ways, we really are reducing the nourishment, i.e. the medicinal properties of food, aren't we? By forced growing, by unnecessarily heavy use of chemical fertilizers and so on. All this for the sake of profit, all this for the sake of satisfying greed. We are undermining the health of the people of this world, and especially of this civilized world, that is to say, including the United Kingdom. I'm glad to think or see that there is, I believe, a movement towards eating better food. There are, I think, a few signs of better restaurants opening that can provide comparatively cheap, good quality, wholesome food. This movement is afoot. Let's encourage it by eating well ourselves. Eating healthy food is vitally important to our existence as vibrant, valuable human beings. A young man came to see me just recently, suffering from a very serious illness. During our talk, he told me how over a period of 5 years he'd eaten such trash. I wonder how much that affected his physical makeup and caused him to suffer as he's suffering now. So, especially young people here, don't neglect food. Food is vital. Without it, you'll never be happy. You can never achieve your mission in life because it gives you health. Then a little further, it talks rather remotely about, with the exception of the 5 highest heavens in the world of form, all the regions of the worlds of form and desire will become deprived of the 7 flavors and the 3 essences that nourish life and human society until nothing remains alive anymore. Nothing remains alive anymore. Nothing sparkles anymore. Nothing shines. Everything is dull and dejected. Towards the end it says, all the good discourses that lead men to emancipation will at this time disappear. Apathy, isn't it? And despair. The 7 flavors have gone. You can read what they are in the notes. Salty, sweet, and so on. All sorts of contrasts. This is the spice of life. Another way of putting it. Life loses its spice, its sparkle. People get apathetic and negative. They can't be bothered to challenge anything anymore because they think they can't win. The spice of life has gone.